One of the most frustrating things about airline flying is choosing how long to give yourself for a connecting flight. On one hand, you want to get to your destination as quickly as possible, and on the other hand, giving yourself too tight of a connection could cause you to miss your connecting flight entirely. So how long of a layover should you give yourself? Well, there are a lot of factors that you should consider. So in this video, I'm going to share with you everything that you should consider when choosing how long of a layover to give yourself, and also give you some tips if you do find yourself with a tight connection. Let's go.
Dream vacations start here.
So each airline sets standard minimum connecting times at each hub they serve. Some of these connecting times can be as short as 30 minutes, which you may have seen. But keep in mind that just because the airline will sell you an itinerary with a tight connection, that doesn't mean you should buy it. Think about the time it takes to get off the plane, especially if you're sitting in the back, and the time it can take to get to the next gate, which could easily be in another terminal. Even if you do make it in time, the experience can be stressful and leave you with no time for things like visiting the restroom or buying a meal before your next flight. For those reasons alone, I would never recommend booking just a 30-minute connecting flight. So how much time should you give yourself to make a connecting flight? Let's take a look at some factors to consider. The first factor to consider when choosing flights and deciding the length of your connecting time is whether you'll be booking your flights on a single reservation or as two separate tickets. This can be tricky to catch if you're booking your flights through a third-party website like Travelocity, Kayak, Expedia, or something similar. Most of the time, if you see your flights on two different airlines, these airlines have what's called an interline agreement with each other, which just means that they are partner airlines. But other times, these websites are just trying to put you on the cheapest flights, even if it means putting you on two separate airlines that have no partnership with each other. The reason this matters is because if you end up getting booked on two separate non-partner airlines and you're going to be checking bags, you're going to have to collect your bags in between flights and then recheck them in with the next airline. Doing so will require you to leave security, collect your bags, check them in with the next airline, and then go through security again. And if you're flying internationally, then that also means going through customs and immigration and possibly needing a visa. If you find yourself in this scenario, then you'll need to give yourself at least 2 to 3 hours to go through this process. So how can you tell if two airlines are partner airlines? The best way to do this is once you've done your search on the third-party site and have chosen the flights that you want, look at either airline that you'll be flying on and then go directly to that airline's website and search for the exact flights that you want to book. The airline will only show flights with other airlines that they have a partnership with. So if the flights match with what you found online, then you're good to book them. You may also find that booking directly on the airline's website is cheaper than booking through a third-party website. Plus, you'll also find that the airline is more willing to help you when issues come up. The other downside of booking two separate flights is that if your first flight gets delayed, causing you to miss your second flight, the second airline will treat you as a no-show and will cancel your ticket. Now, you might be able to convince the airline to rebook you, but they're under no obligation to do so, which means you could be on the hook to purchase another ticket at last-minute prices. Booking your flights together under one reservation will help eliminate the need for you to recheck your bags, and if you do happen to miss your connecting flight, the airline will rebook you to the next available flight free of charge. The second factor to consider when deciding on the length of your connection is the airport itself and the time of year. There's no doubt that some airports are better to connect through than others, but you also want to factor in the time of year and the weather that can occur during that specific time of year. In the US, for example, the worst airports for delays would be the three New York area airports. That would be JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia. And then you have Chicago O'Hare, San Francisco, and Boston. This is especially true during the winter months where snowstorms can greatly impact flights, causing weather delays. It's best to choose other airports such as Charlotte, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, and Phoenix to connect through. For international flights, I would avoid London Heathrow if at all possible, only because the terminals for the most part are not connected, which means you have to take either a bus or train to get to the next terminal, plus go through a security check. I would allow at least 90 minutes for a connecting flight there. Other airports I would avoid are connecting through Paris and Frankfurt. Instead, Amsterdam, Munich, Madrid, Rome, and Zurich would be much better options. A third factor to consider is if you're going to be checking luggage. Booking a tight connection doesn't give the best chance of your luggage making it on your connecting flight. You might be able to make the connecting flight, but it doesn't mean your luggage will. Your luggage first has to get unloaded among the many bags on your flight, go through a sorting process, and then get transferred to your next flight. If you're connecting through a major airport, this process can easily take 45 minutes or more, depending on how busy the airport is. For international flights, you also want to research the entry requirements for the country you have a layover at. Some countries may require you to have a visa even if you're just passing through, and some countries, like the US, require you to collect your luggage, go through customs and immigration, and then recheck your luggage before proceeding to the next flight. All of which will require additional time to complete these steps. Factor number 4 to consider is if you're traveling with kids or traveling with physical disabilities. Young kids can be unpredictable when it comes to bathroom needs and meals, so it would not hurt to add in some extra time between flights. And those of you with physical disabilities who may need wheelchair assistance or other help, you may want to add in extra time as well. So if you do find yourself having to book a tight connection, here are some tips that will help you make that connecting flight. Number 1, choose a seat near the front of the plane on your first flight. Even if you have to pay a little extra to do so, sitting near the front of the plane can save 5 to 10 minutes off your deplaning time, especially on larger airplanes. Number 2, have a baggage plan for your connecting flight. If you find yourself with a tight connection, you might want to forego taking a carry-on on the plane with you, as this can slow you down. If you can get away with just taking a personal item bag, this will help you get to your next gate quickly without having to haul around a carry-on with you. Number 3, avoid the last connection of the day. While it's true that if you miss your connecting flight, the airline will rebook you on the next flight. However, if you miss the last flight of the day, the next flight will obviously require an overnight stay at the connecting airport, and you'll end up arriving a day late to your destination. The best scenario is to book a morning flight so that you'll have some opportunities to catch a later flight if you should miss your original connection. Number 4, pick the right hub for your flight connection. I talked about this earlier in the video, but personally I like to avoid connecting in the Midwest cities during the winter months. Those cities would be Chicago, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Minneapolis. Instead, I would choose more southern states to connect through to avoid being delayed by a snowstorm. In the summer, it might be the opposite because of the threat of thunderstorms that tend to occur in the south. And number 5, direct flights are still the best option. If you have a can't miss event, spend a little more and book a direct flight, or leave a day earlier to give yourself a buffer in case the worst happens. Personally, if I'm traveling by myself, I like to give myself at least an hour to make a connection for a domestic flight and at least an hour and a half to 2 hours for an international flight. If you're a new flyer, I would give yourself even more time since the airport experience will be new to you, and having that extra time will ensure you get to your next flight on time. And hey, if you found this information helpful, give the video a like and then check out some of my other videos that may be helpful to you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you again in a future video.